The first thing that caught my attention wasn't the blaring of the emergency systems or the flashing red lights that bathed the command center in an eerie glow. It was the silence. The sudden, absolute silence as every crew member on the bridge stopped what they were doing and turned toward the communications panel. We'd been drifting through the outer reaches of the Andromeda sector for 3 standard months, our research vessel collecting data on spatial anomalies. Not once in those 3 months had we received any transmission besides the regular check-ins from Central Command. "Captain," our communications officer whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's systems. "You need to hear this." I remember crossing the bridge in what felt like slow motion, the faces of my crew members following me with expressions ranging from curiosity to undisguised fear. When I reached the comm station, Officer Chen simply pressed a button and stepped back. The message began with a burst of static, then clarified into something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It wasn't the standard encrypted digital transmission we were accustomed to receiving. It was a voice that sounded distinctly non-human. "This is Emergency Beacon Alpha 7 of the Galactic Confederation. Our colony on Proxima Centauri is facing extinction-level atmospheric degradation. Our environmental systems have failed. 2,000 lives at risk. Any species receiving this transmission, we beg for assistance." The message repeated, each word carefully pronounced as if the sender had studied our language, but never actually spoken it before. I looked around at my crew, seeing my own shock reflected in their faces. "How far are we from Proxima Centauri?" I asked our navigator. 3 days at maximum warp, Captain," she replied, already pulling up the coordinates. We had all heard stories about the Galactic Confederation. They were supposed to be myth, a highly advanced species that had achieved interstellar travel millennia before humans had even discovered electricity. They were rumored to view us as primitive, barely worth acknowledging. And now they were asking for help. From us. I didn't need to give the order. My crew was already preparing for the course change, checking our medical supplies, running diagnostics on our atmospheric purification systems to see if they could be modified to help an alien world. "Captain," our science officer approached, tablet in hand. "There's something you should know." The time stamp on this message. It was sent over 40 years ago. The weight of his words hit me like a physical blow. 40 years. Whatever crisis had prompted that desperate call for help had long since reached its conclusion. We were arriving 4 decades too late. But we went anyway. What else could we do? When we dropped out of warp near Proxima Centauri, we expected to find a dead world. A grim monument to a civilization we'd never had the chance to know. What we found instead was a thriving planet with atmospheric composition almost identical to Earth's. Our sensors detected massive cities, advanced technology, and a population of approximately 2 billion. "I don't understand," I murmured, staring at the readings. They said their atmospheric systems were failing. "Captain," our comms officer called out, her voice tense. "We're being hailed from the surface." The view screen activated, and for the first time in human history, we came face to face with a member of the Galactic Confederation. The alien had iridescent blue skin that seemed to shimmer with its own internal light. Its eyes were large and completely black, and when it spoke, its mouth didn't move. The words simply appeared in our minds. "Humans of Earth vessel," it greeted us. "We have been waiting for you." I stepped forward, trying to maintain my composure. "We received your distress call." I apologize for our delayed response. The alien's head tilted slightly. "There was no delay, Captain. You arrived precisely when we calculated you would." "But the message, it was sent 40 years ago." "Yes. We needed to ensure you would have achieved sufficient technological advancement to assist us. The message was sent when we predicted your species would develop the necessary warp capabilities to reach us within your lifetime." I glanced at my science officer, who looked equally confused. "I don't understand. Your planet seems to be thriving. What assistance could you possibly need from us?" The alien was silent for a moment, its black eyes unreadable. When it spoke again, there was something in its mental voice that could almost be described as humility. Captain, the Confederation has mastered technology beyond your imagination. We can reshape planets, harness the energy of stars, and extend our lives for millennia. But in our pursuit of advancement, we lost something essential, something your species possesses in abundance. And what might that be? I asked. Creativity, imagination, the ability to find solutions where none seem to exist. The alien's form seemed to shimmer more intensely. Our atmospheric systems did indeed fail 40 years ago by your count. Our finest minds could not solve the problem. But we found records of human history, how your kind repeatedly faced extinction, and somehow always found a way to survive, to adapt. The alien gestured, and the view screen split to show images of human achievement throughout history. Primitive humans surviving ice ages, the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, the space age. We did not need your technology, Captain. We needed your perspective. We needed humanity. I stood there, speechless, as the implications sank in. The most advanced species in the galaxy had called out to us, not because of our achievements, but because of our essential nature. Will you help us, Captain? Will humanity answer our call? I looked around at my crew. I saw something remarkable dawning on their faces, the realization that perhaps, just perhaps, we had something valuable to offer the stars after all. And that was only the beginning of how humanity found its place in the galaxy. I found myself at a crossroads unlike any humanity had ever faced. Here we were, a single Earth vessel, being asked to provide something intangible to the most advanced civilization in the known galaxy. The faces of my crew reflected my own mixture of pride and apprehension. After a moment of consideration, I gave the only answer I could. We will help you. That's what we do. The alien's form seemed to pulse with what I interpreted as relief. We will send coordinates for landing. Prepare a delegation of your most diverse thinkers. As the transmission ended, the bridge erupted in a flurry of questions and exclamations. I raised my hand for silence. I know this is unprecedented, I said, looking at each crew member in turn. But this is why we ventured into space in the first place, to make contact, to learn, to help if we could. Now, I need recommendations for our delegation. Officer Chen stepped forward first. Captain, I suggest Dr. Rivera from Xenobiology. He spent his career theorizing about alien physiology. Good. I nodded. Who else? Lieutenant Putul, offered our navigator. She's not just a stellar navigator. She spent years as an environmental engineer before joining the fleet. And Zhang from engineering, added our science officer. He can look at any system and find 3 ways to improve it using nothing but spare parts and intuition. By the time we had our delegation assembled, 7 crew members with diverse backgrounds and thinking styles, we had already begun our descent toward the coordinates provided by the Confederation. I'd chosen to join the landing party myself, despite protocol suggesting the captain remain aboard during first contact situations. Some moments in history demand personal witnesses. The landing site was a vast plaza surrounded by towers that seemed to be made of living crystal. They pulsed with inner light in complex patterns that I suspected might be some form of communication. Thousands of the blue-skinned aliens had gathered to watch our shuttle land, standing in perfect, silent rows. As we stepped onto the surface of Proxima Centauri, the gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth's, giving us an almost buoyant feeling. The air was breathable as our sensors had indicated, but it carried strange, sweet undertones that reminded me of cinnamon and ozone. Our alien contact from the transmission approached, flanked by what appeared to be a council of similar beings, distinguished by elaborate markings that shimmered across their blue skin. I am Sentinel. Our contact introduced itself directly into our minds. Lead Archon of the Confederation's Science Directive. These are the Council of 7, our governing body. I introduced each member of our delegation in turn, explaining their areas of expertise. The aliens observed us with those unnerving black eyes, their heads occasionally tilting in what seemed like curiosity. "Come," Sentinel projected. "We will show you the problem." We were led to a massive structure that appeared to be a blend of technology and organic material. Inside was a vast chamber containing what could only be described as a three-dimensional model of their planet's atmosphere. Clouds, wind patterns, and particulate matter, all represented by flowing light of different colors. 43 of your years ago, Sentinel explained, our atmospheric composition began to change. Carbon levels increased, oxygen decreased. Our environmental regulation systems could not correct the imbalance. Dr. Rivera stepped forward, studying the model intently. "How did you survive? Your population seems to have grown since then." "We created atmospheric domes around our major population centers," one of the council members projected. "But these are temporary measures. The domes require enormous energy to maintain, and our world outside is becoming uninhabitable." "But what caused the initial imbalance?" Lieutenant Patil asked, already circling the model, her eyes tracking the flow patterns. "We believe it was an unforeseen consequence of our planetary defense grid," Sentinel admitted. "A system designed to protect us from cosmic threats began to interact with our atmosphere in ways we did not predict." Zhang, our engineer, squinted at the model. "You're telling us you can travel between stars, but you can't fix your own air." I shot him a warning look, but Sentinel projected what felt like resignation. Engineer Zhang identifies our paradox perfectly. We have achieved great technological advancement, but our thinking has become uniform. We solve problems in established ways. When those ways fail, we have no alternatives. "That's why you called us," I realized aloud. "Humans are messy thinkers. We come at problems from odd angles." "Precisely, Captain," Sentinel confirmed. "Your species has faced extinction multiple times, yet you persist through adaptability and unconventional solutions." For the next several days, our delegation immersed itself in the atmospheric problem. The Confederation provided us with all their data, their failed solutions, and unlimited access to their resources. Each night when we returned to our shuttle to rest, the aliens apparently did not sleep. We would compare notes and brainstorm ideas. On the fourth day, Lieutenant Patel woke me from a sound sleep, her eyes wide with excitement. "Captain, I think I've figured it out. It's not just about the defense grid. It's about balance. They've been trying to engineer a perfect solution, but Earth's atmosphere isn't maintained by technology. It's maintained by life itself. Plants, oceans, soil microbes, all working in concert. By morning, we had formulated a proposal that seemed almost embarrassingly simple to us, but was apparently revolutionary to the Confederation. Introduce genetically modified plant life designed to thrive in their changing atmosphere and gradually restore balance through natural processes, supported by minimal technological intervention. When we presented our solution to the Council of Seven, there was a long silence. Then something extraordinary happened. The aliens began to shimmer intensely, their skin pulsing with waves of light that moved from one being to the next. "They're laughing," Dr. Rivera whispered in astonishment. "I think they're actually laughing." "Not mockery," Sentinel quickly projected to us. "Joy. Revelation. For millennia, we have sought to control our environment through technology alone. The idea of partnering with simplified life forms, of creating a self-sustaining system rather than a controlled one. This is why we called to the stars for human perspective." As the Council approved our proposal and preparations began for implementation, I found myself standing with Sentinel on a balcony overlooking their capital city. The alien was silent for a long time before projecting a thought that chilled me to the bone. "Captain, there is something we have not told you. The atmospheric crisis was merely the first test." "Test?" I turned to face the alien. "What do you mean, test?" Sentinel's black eyes reflected the city lights as it replied. "The galaxy is changing, Captain. Threats are emerging that even the Confederation cannot comprehend, let alone counter. We needed to know if humans could truly offer the perspective we lacked before we revealed the greater crisis. "And what is this greater crisis?" I asked, suddenly wary. "Something is coming from beyond the galactic rim," Sentinel projected softly. "Something that does not think as we do, nor as you do. But perhaps together, we might understand it in time." I looked out at the alien city, then up at the unfamiliar stars, feeling the weight of Sentinel's words. What had begun as a rescue mission had become something far more significant, the beginning of a partnership that might determine the fate of all intelligent life in the galaxy. And humanity, with all our messy thinking and stubborn persistence, was now at the center of it all. The days following Sentinel's revelation passed in a blur of activity, as our original mission to address the atmospheric crisis continued with promising results. A select group from our crew was brought into a highly secured facility beneath the capital city. Here, the Confederation revealed what they knew about the threat beyond the galactic rim. "We first detected the anomaly 15 of your years ago," explained Elder Vizaris, the most ancient member of the Council of Seven. The Elder's skin had a deeper blue tint, almost indigo, with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as they spoke directly into our minds. We stood before a massive holographic display showing the edge of the Milky Way. A shadow moved there, not a physical darkness, but rather an absence, a place where stars simply stopped being visible. "It consumes light, energy, and information," Sentinel added. "It does not communicate or respond to any form of contact. It simply advances." Dr. Rivera studied the projection with intense focus. "How fast is it moving?" "Approximately 1 light-year every 3 Earth months," Elder Vizaris answered. "At current velocity, it will reach the first inhabited systems within 7 years." The implications were staggering. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just a threat to one planet or species, it endangered everything. "Have you attempted to study it directly?" I asked. "We sent 17 probe vessels," Sentinel replied. None returned. "The last transmitted data suggests they were not destroyed but rather absorbed." Lieutenant Patel spoke up. "If this thing absorbs information, wouldn't sending more probes just be feeding it?" The council members exchanged what I had come to recognize as their equivalent of significant glances, subtle pulses of light that moved between them. This perspective never occurred to us," Elder Vizaris admitted. "We have been sending increasingly advanced probes, believing more sophisticated technology would succeed where simpler versions failed." Zhang snorted. "So you've been supersizing its meals, essentially." I shot him another warning look, but Elder Vizaris's skin rippled in what we now recognized as their version of laughter. "This is precisely why we sought humans. You think in metaphors, in organic terms. You see relationships where we see only data points." Over the following weeks, our crew integrated fully with the Confederation's scientists. We established a joint command center aboard our vessel, the Horizon, since it offered something unusual. A space designed for collaborative thought, rather than the Confederation's typical isolated work pods. Our mess hall became the unlikely center of the galaxy's most crucial think tank, with humans and Confederation members sharing meals, though the aliens consumed only light and what appeared to be electrical energy. It was during one of these informal gatherings that Officer Chen made the observation that would change everything. "You know what this reminds me of," she said, staring at the latest sensor readings of the galactic anomaly. "An immune response." The room fell silent. "Explain," requested Sentinel. "In human bodies, when an infection occurs, our immune system isolates and consumes the threat. White blood cells engulf bacteria. What if—" She hesitated, as if hesitant to voice such an outlandish idea. "What if the galaxy itself is alive in some sense, and this phenomenon is its way of responding to something it perceives as a threat?" Dr. Rivera jumped in excitedly. "That would explain the absorption rather than destruction. It's not trying to annihilate. It's trying to neutralize and incorporate." "But what could the galaxy possibly see as a threat?" I asked. What could threaten something as vast as a galaxy? The answer came from an unexpected source. One of the younger Confederation scientists, who had been working closely with Zhang, projected a thought so strong it reached all of us simultaneously. Use advanced civilizations, our use of energy. The Confederation members began to pulse with agitation, their skin flickering rapidly with patterns none of us could interpret. Impossible. Elder Viserys projected firmly. The Confederation has existed for millions of years. We have always used the energy of stars. But not like now, the young scientist countered. Not with quantum fold technology. Not with dimension-shifting drives. These are recent developments, and they create ripples in the fabric of space-time far beyond what our previous technologies did. A heated debate erupted, with the council members dismissing the theory while our human crew found it increasingly plausible. The argument might have continued indefinitely if not for the emergency alert that suddenly blared throughout the horizon. "Captain to the bridge," came the urgent call. When we arrived, our sensors showed the unthinkable. The anomaly had suddenly accelerated, moving at nearly 10 times its previous speed. At this rate, it would reach populated systems within months, not years. Something triggered it, Lieutenant Patel whispered. "It's reacting to something." Elder Viserys' form seemed to dim slightly. 3 days ago, we launched our most advanced quantum fold probe, against your recommendations. I did not believe your theory had merit. The weight of those words hung in the air. The Confederation, for all its advancement, had made a catastrophic error based on its inability to consider new perspectives. "We need to evacuate the border systems immediately," I ordered. "And we need to shut down every quantum fold device in the galaxy. That would cripple our civilization." Sentinel projected, distress evident in the thought. "Better crippled than consumed," Zhang responded bluntly. As evacuation orders went out and the Confederation began the unprecedented process of powering down their most advanced technologies, our joint team worked tirelessly to develop a new approach. If the anomaly was indeed some kind of galactic immune response, perhaps we could communicate with it, convince it we weren't a threat. The plan that emerged was audacious to the point of insanity. We would convert the horizon into a messenger, modifying our ship to transmit on frequencies that mirrored natural cosmic phenomena, rather than artificial ones. Instead of trying to probe or study the anomaly, we would approach it with the electromagnetic equivalent of a white flag, signals that mimic the natural energy patterns of stellar formation. As preparations for our mission neared completion, I found myself once again standing with Sentinel, this time in the horizon's observation deck, looking out at the stars that now seemed less like a backdrop and more like a living entity watching us in return. "If we fail," Sentinel projected softly, "both our civilizations end." "I know," I replied. "But if we succeed, both our civilizations will be transformed. Neither humans nor the Confederation can continue as we have been. We've been treating the galaxy as a resource to be used, rather than a system to be part of." Sentinel's form pulsed with a new pattern I hadn't seen before. "This is why we called to you, though we did not understand it then. Humans have never forgotten that you are part of something larger than yourselves." As the final preparations were completed and our crew prepared to take the horizon directly toward the advancing anomaly, I addressed the combined Human Confederation team. "We face an unprecedented threat, but also an unprecedented opportunity. For the first time, we are not just explorers of space, but potentially communicators with it. Whatever happens next will write the future of intelligent life in this galaxy." The horizon's engines thrummed to life as we set course for the darkness at the edge of everything we knew. Behind us, the massive evacuation continued. Ahead of us, a phenomenon we barely understood approached with frightening speed. And between these forces, a single ship carrying the combined wisdom of two vastly different civilizations raced toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of all. As the horizon approached the edge of known space, a profound silence settled over the bridge. Through the view screen, we could see the anomaly, a vast emptiness that seemed to devour the stars themselves, leaving nothing but void in its wake. Our sensors struggled to provide any meaningful data. They simply registered nothing where something should be. All systems ready for transmission, Lieutenant Puddle reported, her voice steady despite the tension evident in her posture. I nodded. Begin broadcasting the stellar formation patterns. Our modified communication array hummed to life, sending out carefully crafted energy signatures that mimicked the natural processes of star birth. We had essentially created an artificial stellar nursery in signal form, a message that said, "We are part of this galaxy's natural cycle." For 3 hours, we maintained position at what we designated the safe threshold, close enough to ensure our signals reached the anomaly, but far enough away to execute an emergency jump if necessary. The Confederation members aboard remained unnaturally still during this time, their blue skin barely pulsing with light as they focused their considerable mental energies on the task at hand. No change in the anomaly's behavior, Officer Chen reported after the 4th hour. It continues to advance at accelerated speed. Disappointment rippled through the bridge. Our first attempt at communication had failed. Perhaps we need to consider that this isn't an immune response, Dr. Rivera suggested. Maybe it's something else entirely. Before anyone could respond, Zhang, who had been monitoring the engine output, suddenly straightened in his seat. Captain, I'm detecting an energy feedback loop in our transmission system. Something is responding to our signal, but it's not coming from the anomaly. It's coming from behind us. On screen, I ordered. The view screen shifted to show the space behind our vessel. At first, I saw nothing unusual, just the distant lights of stars. Then, almost imperceptibly, some of those stars began to move. Not randomly, but in formation. Complex, interlocking patterns that couldn't possibly be natural. Foes aren't stars, Sentinel projected, the mental voice tinged with awe. Those are vessels, thousands of them. As we watched, the distant lights grew larger, approaching our position with impossible speed. Within minutes, we could make out their shapes, crystalline structures that seemed to flow and shift rather than maintain rigid forms, glowing with internal light that pulsed in rhythms reminiscent of the patterns on the Confederation members' skin. Scanning, Officer Chen reported, her fingers flying over her console. There. I don't know what they are. The composition registers as both organic and inorganic simultaneously. They're alive, but also constructed. We're being hailed, announced our communications officer. The signal it's coming through on the exact same frequency we've been broadcasting, but inverted. Open a channel, I ordered, my mouth suddenly dry. The view screen flickered, and an image appeared that caused several crew members to gasp audibly. The being before us had no definable shape. It shifted constantly between forms that seemed both familiar and utterly alien. At times, it appeared almost human. At others, it resembled the Confederation members. And sometimes, it took on aspects that reminded me of cosmic phenomena, nebulae, black holes, stellar nurseries. When it spoke, the words came not through our translation systems, but directly into our minds, similar to how the Confederation communicated, but vastly more powerful. The sensation was overwhelming, like standing beneath a waterfall of pure thought. We have been waiting. The children fine as ONEEI glanced at Sentinel, whose form had gone completely still. Do you know what these beings are? Myths, Sentinel projected weakly. Stories told among the oldest Confederation worlds. The architects, those who seeded the galaxy with the building blocks of life. They were thought to have departed or gone extinct billions of years ago. I turned back to the screen, steeling myself. I am captain of the Earth vessel Horizon. We come seeking to understand and communicate with the anomaly threatening our worlds. The being's form rippled in what might have been amusement. No TNANOMNLI. HCLEN sing. Biguan, wiki in the Shageldri and Forjot, their PLAC in THEPATTRN. The quantum fold technology, whispered Zhang. They're talking about our advanced energy manipulation. Are you responsible for the void that's consuming our stars? I asked directly. Void is necessary. When Balan C is threat indeed. UTER ATDEFA Bureaucracy of existence. We are EPAIR. Elder Viserys stepped forward, the ancient Confederation members' form glowing with unexpected intensity. We did not know. We did not understand the damage we were causing. UNDRSTNDING was lost. The older Childurian forgot. The younger Childurian, NITEVERLEARNED. It became clear in that moment. The Confederation were the older children, a species that had once known the architects, but had forgotten their teachings over millions of years of development. Humans were the younger children, never having encountered these ancient beings at all. Can the cleansing be stopped? I asked. We've already begun shutting down the technologies that damage the fabric of space-time. The being's form shifted again, taking on aspects of what looked like a cosmic web connecting stars. Damage is EXTEN Sci-Fi. Repairs have begun. Can not be HAOTD without greater COLLEPSSE. A coldness settled in my stomach. They were saying the void would continue its advance, even if we abandoned the harmful technologies. Billions would still die as entire star systems were consumed. Then Lieutenant Patel stepped forward, her eyes wide with sudden inspiration. What if we helped repair the damage? What if we redirected our technologies to strengthen the fabric rather than tear it? The being paused, its form momentarily stabilizing into something that resembled a double helix made of starlight. EXPLAN. As Patel outlined her idea, using modified quantum fold technology to reinforce the weakened areas of spacetime, rather than exploit them for energy or transportation. I watched the architect's reaction carefully. Their form began to pulse in a pattern that seemed to resonate with the lights of the Confederation members. POTENTYAL, EKEXISTIS, but truest dues anot. The children AHVSTRAYEDVFORE, then monitor us. I suggested, an idea forming. Remain among us. Guide us. Teach us what we've forgotten or never knew. TA architects do not NTRF, ER. But you already have, I countered. The void is interference. The cleansing is a direct intervention. Perhaps there's a better way, one that preserves life while restoring balance. As I spoke these words, something extraordinary happened. The vast fleet of crystalline vessels began to arrange themselves in a formation that mirrored exactly the pattern we had been broadcasting. The signature of stellar formation. It was as if they were acknowledging our attempt at communication, recognizing that we had, however clumsily, tried to speak their language. A test, while be permitted, the being finally projected. One system, one chance, Sutuv CED, and he kili insing ne be RE fail. And it will ACCLERAT. As the terms of this cosmic challenge settled over us, I realized we had just committed to something unprecedented, a partnership between humans, the Confederation, and these ancient architects to heal the very fabric of space-time itself. The fate of countless worlds now rested on our ability to transform destructive technology into restorative tools. We'll need to select the right system, Elder Viserys projected. One damaged enough to demonstrate our methods, but stable enough that failure won't cause catastrophic collapse. As our joint team began rapid preparations for this ultimate test, Sentinel approached me privately, the alien's form pulsing with an emotion I couldn't quite interpret. Captain, there is something the architects are not telling us. Something they fear. What do you mean? I asked. If they are as powerful as our legends suggest, why not simply repair the damage themselves? Why test us at all? The question hung between us, unanswered, as the horizon prepared to depart for the chosen test site. A dying star system on the edge of Confederation space, already half consumed by the advancing void. Whatever awaited us, there would determine not just our future, but the very nature of life's relationship with the cosmos itself. The journey to the dying star system took just under 13 hours. During that time, our combined Human Confederation team worked frantically to modify our quantum fold generators based on Lieutenant Patul's breakthrough insight. The theory was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of using the technology to punch through space-time for travel or energy extraction, we would create a stabilizing field that reinforced the weakened areas, like applying a patch to torn fabric. As we approached the test site, the devastation became apparent. Half the system had already been consumed by the void, including 2 of its 5 planets. The star itself was visibly diminished, its light flickering as if struggling to maintain its existence against the encroaching nothingness. "Position us at the boundary," I ordered, my voice sounding strangely calm despite the tension thrumming through my body. Through the view screen, we could see the edge where reality itself seemed to end. Not darkness, but a complete absence of anything perceivable. Our sensors couldn't penetrate it, couldn't even confirm its existence except through the absence of what should have been there. "Generators at full capacity," John reported from engineering. "Ready to initiate the stabilization field on your command." I looked at Sentinel and Elder Viserys, who had insisted on remaining on the bridge for this crucial moment. "Any last insights from the Confederation archives that might help us?" Elder Viserys' form pulsed dimly. "No, Captain. We are now venturing beyond even our most ancient knowledge." I took a deep breath, acutely aware that this moment would echo across the history of both our civilizations, assuming we had any future history left to write. "Initiate the field," I commanded. The ship hummed with power as our modified quantum fold generators activated. Unlike the usual sharp energy spike of a fold jump, this was a sustained, resonant frequency that seemed to vibrate through the very atoms of our being. On the view screen, we could see the energy field expanding outward from the horizon, a shimmering web of light that spread toward the boundary of the void. For several tense minutes, nothing seemed to happen. The field reached the edge of the void and appeared to stop, neither penetrating nor affecting the nothingness. "It's not working," John reported, frustration evident in his voice. "The field can't establish anchor points within the void to begin the restoration process." Dr. Rivera, who had been monitoring the biological impact of our experiment, suddenly straightened. "Wait, look at the star." We all turned our attention to the system's dying sun. For a moment, I saw nothing unusual, and then I noticed it. The star's erratic flickering had stabilized. Its light was steady, even slightly stronger than when we had arrived. "The field is reinforcing what's left," Lieutenant Patul realized aloud. "It's not pushing back the void, but it's strengthening what remains against further consumption." "That's not enough," I said, disappointment washing over me. The architects demanded we demonstrate repair, not just prevention. Sentinel's form suddenly pulsed with intense light. "Captain, I believe I understand what's happening. The void isn't a thing. It's an absence. We cannot push against nothing. But perhaps we need to rebuild from what remains." Officer Chen completed the thought, her fingers already flying across her console. "Recalibrating the field to use the star's existing matter as a template for restoration." The ship shuddered as our generators adjusted to the new parameters. The energy field changed, becoming more concentrated, more purposeful. It began to pulse in a rhythm that matched the star's own energy signature. What happened next defied easy explanation. The boundary between existence and void began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Where before there had been absolute nothingness, tiny points of light began to appear, seemingly random at first, then gradually organizing into recognizable patterns of cosmic matter. "It's working," whispered Dr. Rivera, his voice filled with awe. "We're seeding the void with the building blocks of reality." For hours, we maintained the field as the process continued. It was painfully slow, repairing reality itself. It seemed was not something that could be rushed. But gradually, undeniably, a portion of the consumed system began to reappear, reconstructed from the template provided by what remained. As the 18-hour mark approached, our generators began to show signs of critical strain. "We can't maintain the field much longer," John reported tensely. "The system is overheating. We're looking at catastrophic failure in less than 30 minutes. I was about to order a shutdown of the process when the ship's sensors detected an approaching energy signature. "Captain," Officer Chen called out, "the architects are here." On the view screen, we watched as one of their crystalline vessels approached the boundary between existence and our partially restored section of space-time. It pulsed with light in a complex pattern, and suddenly our own generator stabilized, the warning alarms falling silent. "They're reinforcing our field," Zhang reported in disbelief. "Somehow they've linked their systems to ours, taking on most of the strain." With the architect's support, the restoration process accelerated dramatically. Within another hour, nearly a quarter of the previously consumed system had been reconstructed, not exactly as it had been before, but stable and real once more. Finally, the field dissipated, and our generators powered down. In its place, a new boundary had formed, not the absolute nothingness of the void, but a shimmering barrier that separated the restored portion from what remained consumed. The mental voice of the architects filled our minds once more. "The test is TONCLUDET. The children have DNOVNSDRATEUMDERSTANDINGI stepped forward. "We've only restored a small portion. What about the rest of the system? The rest of the galaxy that's already been consumed?" "COMPLET restoration is beyond your capability, but balance can be maintained. Growth can resume where CLENSNG Hayes PASSED Sentinel's form pulsed with what I had come to recognize as the Confederation equivalent of hope. "You're saying we can't recover what's already been lost, but we can rebuild in its place." "HTHE PAKI EORN KONTELINUIS. It ADAPTs. As ATHAs always DONE." And then came the revelation that Sentinel had sensed was being withheld, the truth the architects had feared to share. "We too are bound by laws beyond our making. We too have limits. The cleansing was not solely our choice. It was NECSSI. The fabric tears faster than we can the ALOA." Understanding dawned across the bridge. The architects, for all their advanced evolution, were not gods. They were stewards, powerful but not omnipotent, working within constraints we were only beginning to comprehend. And they needed help, our help, to maintain the cosmic balance. "TAI's system will be your laboratory. Develop your methods. When ready, join us in TAA Greater Bork." As the crystalline vessel withdrew, taking position among dozens of others that had arrived to witness our test, the implications of what had just transpired washed over us. This wasn't just about saving our civilizations from the void. This was an invitation to evolve, to join the architects as caretakers of reality itself. I turned to my crew and the Confederation members, seeing in their faces the same mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration that I felt myself. "We have a lot of work ahead of us," I said simply. Elder Visorus's form glowed with a depth of emotion I had never witnessed from any Confederation member. For millions of years, we advanced thinking only of what we could take from the cosmos. Now we must learn to give back. As the horizon prepared to return to Confederation space, with news of our partial success and the incredible responsibility now placed upon our joint shoulders, I found myself at the observation deck, looking out at the half-restored star system. Sentinel joined me, the alien's form unusually subdued. "There is one more thing the architects shared with me privately," Captain. Something they believed only humans might properly understand. What is it? I asked. The void, the cleansing. It has happened before. Many times, and each time, it is not the most technologically advanced species that finds the solution. It is always those who remember their connection to the whole. I smiled slightly. So when they called for help across the stars 40 years ago, they weren't calling to whoever might hear, Sentinel confirmed. They were calling specifically to Earth. They were calling to humanity. As the stars streaked past during our return journey, I reflected on the strange path that had brought us here. From a simple research mission to becoming partners in the most fundamental work in the universe, the maintenance of reality itself, all because humanity had never forgotten something that the Confederation, for all its advancement, had lost along the way. We are not separate from the cosmos. We are part of it, bound to it, responsible for it. And when humans answered the call for help, we changed everything. The return journey to Confederation space felt different somehow, as if the horizon itself sensed the weight of what we carried. Not just information or technology, but the beginning of a fundamental shift in the relationship between conscious life and the cosmos that sustained it. We were met by a delegation of both Confederation and human representatives who had gathered at the Central Command Station orbiting Proxima Centauri. The news of our partial success and the revelation of the Architect's true purpose spread rapidly through both civilizations. Initial reactions ranged from disbelief to excitement to fear. The concept that our most advanced technologies had been damaging the very fabric of reality was difficult for many to accept, particularly among the Confederation's scientific elite who had dedicated millennia to their development. There will be resistance, Elder Viserys warned during our first joint council meeting. Many will see this as a step backward rather than forward. It's not about moving backward, I countered. It's about moving in a different direction entirely. We're not abandoning technology. We're redefining its purpose. In the months that followed, joint Human Confederation research teams formed around the galaxy, working to adapt quantum fold technology into what came to be called restoration fields. Our successful test had provided the blueprint, but scaling the process to address the continuing expansion of the void required innovations from both species. The architects maintained their distance for the most part, observing our progress without direct interference. Occasionally, one of their crystalline vessels would appear near a research outpost, pulsing with patterns of light that our scientists gradually learned to interpret as approval or suggestion for adjustment. They were teaching us, but doing so in a way that allowed us to find our own path. 6 months after our test, we celebrated the first major breakthrough. The team led by Zhang, and a young Confederation scientist, had developed a self-sustaining restoration field generator that could operate for months without requiring a starship to maintain it. The first permanent generator was installed at the boundary of our test system, continuing the slow process of reclaiming reality from the void. As news of the success spread, something unexpected began to happen throughout human space. People from all walks of life started volunteering for what was being called the mending. Not just scientists and engineers, but artists, philosophers, teachers, and ordinary citizens who simply wanted to contribute. They understood, perhaps more intuitively than the Confederation, that this wasn't just a technical challenge, but a philosophical one that required diverse perspectives. This is what the architects saw in us, Dr. Rivera observed as we watched a transmission of thousands of volunteers departing Earth for training facilities near the edge of the void. Not just our problem-solving abilities, but our capacity to rally around a common purpose that transcends individual benefit. A year into the mending, we received an unexpected communication from the architects. They requested a meeting not with scientific or political leaders, but with a group of human children. After much discussion, and with careful preparation, we arranged for a dozen children from various Earth cultures, all between the ages of 8 and 12, to visit a specially prepared facility where the architects could interact with them safely. I was privileged to observe the meeting, though none of the adults were permitted to intervene or direct the conversation. What transpired was remarkable. The architects, who typically communicated in complex thought patterns that even trained adults struggled to fully comprehend, adjusted their approach entirely for the children. Their crystalline forms took on simpler, more playful patterns, and their mental projections became stories and images rather than abstract concepts. The children, for their part, showed none of the hesitation or awe that characterized most adult interactions with the architects. They asked direct questions, offered imaginative suggestions, and even corrected the ancient beings when their understanding of human experience seemed incomplete. "Why did you wait so long to tell anyone about the void?" asked one young girl, a question that diplomatic protocols would have prevented any adult from posing so bluntly. The architect's response came as a simple image shared among all present: a garden with countless different plants, each growing at its own rate. Some flowered early but withered quickly. Others took years to mature but lasted for centuries. They needed us to be ready, the girl explained to the adults afterward, with the confident certainty only a child could muster. Not just smart enough, but ready to listen. That meeting established a new tradition. Every year thereafter, a new group of children would meet with the architects, forming a direct connection between the youngest humans and the ancient caretakers of the galaxy. From these encounters came insights that adult scientists would never have considered, perspectives unburdened by preconceived notions of what was possible or appropriate. The Confederation, initially bewildered by this approach, gradually came to understand its value. Within 2 years, they had established their own program, bringing their younglings, a life stage we had not even known existed until then, into regular contact with both the architects and human children. The three-way exchange of ideas accelerated our progress in ways no one could have predicted. 5 years after our initial encounter with the void, we achieved what many had thought impossible. We'd halted its advance completely. The combination of restoration field generators and modified Confederation technology created a stable boundary beyond which the nothingness could not spread. What had already been consumed remained gone, a sobering reminder of the cost of our previous ignorance. But the rest of the galaxy was safe. With the immediate crisis contained, both humans and the Confederation turned their attention to the deeper implications of what we had learned. New educational systems emerged that taught the interconnectedness of all things as fundamental knowledge rather than philosophical speculation. Technologies were evaluated not just for their utility, but for their harmony with the underlying patterns of existence. The architects, seeing this transformation, began to share more of their own history. They had not always been the ethereal beings we now knew. Billions of years ago, they too had been a physical species not unlike humans or the Confederation, advancing through stages of technological development until they reached a crisis point similar to what we had faced with the void. Their solution had been more radical. They had transformed their very nature, evolving beyond physical form to become the stewards we now knew. Whether this represented a possible future for our own species remained an open question, one that sparked endless debate among both humans and Confederation philosophers. 10 years into our new partnership, I returned to the horizon for its decommissioning ceremony. The ship that had carried us to the edge of oblivion and back was being transformed into a permanent memorial and educational center to orbit the star of the first system we had partially restored from the void. As I walked the familiar corridors one last time, I found Sentinel waiting in the observation deck. The Confederation members' form had changed over the years, the patterns on their blue skin now incorporating elements that resembled both human art and the crystalline structures of the architect's vessels. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you sent that distress call across the stars?" I asked. Sentinel's form pulsed with what I had learned to recognize as gentle amusement. "We called for help with our atmosphere. We received help with the fabric of reality itself. It seems a favorable exchange." We stood in comfortable silence, watching as the first group of students, a mix of human and Confederation younglings, boarded the horizon for its final journey. They would learn the history firsthand, walking where we had walked, seeing what we had seen. but their futures would be different from ours, shaped not by separation and competition, but by cooperation and stewardship. The architects have shared something new with me. Sentinel projected after a while. Something they believe both our species are nearly ready to understand. What is it? I asked. There are other galaxies facing similar crises, other voids, other civilizations struggling to find balance. I smiled, understanding the implication. They want us to help them too, don't they? Not yet. Perhaps not for centuries. But eventually, yes. The work of mending reality extends beyond our galaxy. And they believe that the partnership we formed, humans, Confederation, and architects together, may represent a new approach, a more effective one. As the horizon prepared for its final journey, I reflected on how far we had come from that moment when a simple distress call had reached our research vessel. What had begun as a cry for help had transformed into something far greater, a fundamental shift in our understanding of our place in the cosmos. The stars had always been there, watching us evolve from primitive beings into spacefaring civilizations. But now we understood that they weren't just distant lights or resources to be used. They were part of a living pattern that included us, a pattern we were responsible for maintaining just as it maintained us. When humans answered the call for help from across the stars, we did more than save a dying atmosphere or halt an encroaching void. We remembered a truth that had been forgotten, that in this vast, interconnected cosmos, no species walks alone. The greatest advancements come not from dominating our environment, but from understanding our place within it, from recognizing that true wisdom lies in harmony rather than control. And somewhere out there, beyond our galaxy, other civilizations wait, not yet knowing that someday they too will hear our call.